Hello and welcome to our video about Apple's Dynamic Island feature on the new iPhone. Whether you love it or hate it, Dynamic Island is the most talked about feature on the new iPhone. It looks like a very creative way of solving their problem regarding the top notch. Android has already ditched the notch long time ago, and Apple fans were keen to see their preferred brand finally do it too. While Dynamic Island has been praised as a great fusion of hardware and software, there are some issues with it. Let's begin with the positives. Dynamic Island is a new approach to the top notch on the iPhone. The notch was always considered to be intrusive and many people disliked it. The Dynamic Island is a way to minimize the notch and maximize the amount of usable screen. With the new iPhone Pro, Apple has increased the screen-to-body ratio, which means that the new phone has a larger display than its predecessor. The Dynamic Island is a creative way to solve this problem. Now, let's move on to the issues with Dynamic Island. The first and most obvious problem is that it takes up more vertical space than the classic notch. As soon as the new iPhone was launched, several websites showed visual representations of how the island cuts even more into the display. While Apple has increased the screen-to-body ratio with the new iPhone Pro, it has not really maximized the amount of usable screen space. One could even go as far as saying that the Dynamic Island takes up more vertical space than its predecessor, because let's be honest, who can use the space above the island anyway? Sticking out like a sore thumb and distracting its customers when watching full-screen content is not something Apple was necessarily going for, but here we are. Another major complaint is that users get very easily fingerprints all over the camera. Not only is Dynamic Island more intrusive than the traditional notch, but it is also constantly drawing your attention. It looks alive with fancy animations, and the only way you can interact with the Dynamic Island is with touch inputs. You'll find yourself poking this cutout a lot throughout the day, meaning you're also touching the selfie camera or the area surrounding it. Now, you might say just avoid touching the camera. It's that easy, but accidental touches will still happen. Will it necessarily ruin your pictures? No! But it will degrade the camera ever so slightly, compared to other iPhones. Reachability is another issue with Dynamic Island. Apple's new iPhones are big, especially when you compare them to the sizes from just a few years ago. Dynamic Island is located at the top of the display, which is arguably one of the most difficult parts to reach when you're using your phone with just one hand. And let's be honest, 90% of the time we use the phone with just one hand. It's easy to say that if you can't reach it then just ignore it, but that is the problem. The Dynamic Island is built in such a way that you cannot ignore it. There are constant animations, notifications, and whatnot that will capture your attention and make you want to interact with it, even if you cannot reach it. And lastly, and probably the most important point of this video today, is the usefulness of Dynamic Island. When you give it a closer look, Apple's Dynamic Island does not bring anything new to the table, it just gives a new look to already existing features. According to Apple, Dynamic Island should be used for tracking tasks and live events that have a defined beginning and end, by presenting only the most essential content. The live activity displayed by the Dynamic Island should help users to stay on track with their fitness goals, upcoming appointments, or travel plans. However, some users have reported that the functionality of Dynamic Island is limited and does not offer much more than what can already be accessed through the control center or lock screen. So, what do we make of Apple's Dynamic Island feature? It's a creative solution to the problem of the top notch, but it comes with its own set of issues. The Dynamic Island takes up more vertical space than the traditional notch, it can be distracting and difficult to reach, and its functionality is limited. Whether or not you'll like it is a matter of personal preference, but it's clear that Apple has some work to do in order to improve the feature. Thanks for watching.